Hey everybody, start your week off right with us on Level Up, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern on the YouTube Fun Astrology channel. We're focusing on bringing prosperity of all kinds into our lives. And to that end, I created a 30-minute meditation to help you open yourself to prosperity. It's one of the biggest reasons we don't attract more into our lives. We block it at the door. Go to hightimelinebooks.com to download your Catherine Ponder Open to Prosperity meditation today. Welcome to the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast with Robert Glasscock. Oh, I've got a great listener question. You guys are the best. You are the best listeners, first of all. And second, you ask amazing questions like this.
Hi, Thomas and Robert. Over the summer, I spent quite a bit of time reading the works of Noel Tyl. And in his books, he talks about the significance of unaspected planets in the natal chart. And I was curious what your perspective was on this. Unaspected planets being those that make no Ptolemaic aspects to other planets in the birth chart. So they don't make oppositions, conjunctions, squares, etc. Thank you so much.
Robert, you knew Noel Tyl, didn't you?
Yes, I
Or you met him.
met him. I didn't know him well, but we met and actually worked together at a special event in Los Angeles for Aquarius workshops. Wonderful man. He really was, and terrific astrologer.
Yeah, left a wonderful mark on this industry, and I love Noel Tyl type questions. And of course, you have taken solar arcs, the baton from him and his book, and just run with it. So he, I know, has made a big impact on your own practice. What about this question of unaspected planets?
Well, like you say, I love the listeners. This is such a great question, and she's very observant. And the definition of unaspected planets is exactly what she said, a planet that does not have any Ptolemaic aspects. And there are only 5 Ptolemaic aspects: the conjunction, the sextile, the square, the trine, the opposition. Now, if you included, and some people do, some astrologers include minor aspects, but if you do that, almost every planet will have an aspect. If you stick to the old original definition of unaspected planets, you're only going to consider the Ptolemaic aspects, which she did. And it's really important.
So when you have 2 planets that are unaspected, how do you interpret them?
Well, any unaspected planet basically has no relationship to any other planet in the chart, which means it operates alone. And this can be good or bad. So I put good and bad in quotes. If the planet itself that is unaspected happens to be in a favorable sign, namely a sign that it rules or a sign in which it's dignified or exalted, then that unaspected planet on its own tends to operate pretty positively in the chart. If that unaspected planet is in detriment, the sign of its fall or the sign of its detriment, then it becomes a lot more problematic. But it depends a lot on what the planet, the unaspected planet, is. Theoretically, it could be the sun, the moon, the Mercury, any of the planets. What the planet's nature is. For example, if you have an unaspected moon, let's say, then your instinctive, habitual, emotional responses to life operate as a sort of separate entity. And if that moon happens to be in, say, Cancer or in Taurus, which are very favorable signs for it, then that unaspected moon can operate pretty positively. If the unaspected moon were in Scorpio, which is the sign of its fall, or is detrimented in, say, Capricorn, then the unaspected moon becomes a lot more problematic. And when I say problematic or benefited by either one, positive or negative, you look to the nature of the sign that the moon is in to get more clues how that unaspected moon would operate. For example, an unaspected moon in Capricorn, that moon tends to operate instinctively on considering, this is all subconscious, unconscious with the moon, but it tends to operate unconsciously on emotionally assessing power and position and status in life. This means it can instinctively feel more status than is really justified, or conversely, it can put itself down and feel that other people have more status than it. But it tends to be the moon unaspected in Capricorn, tends to take a pretty material, and this is all unconscious and emotional, a pretty materialistic view in life, so that they assess people by where they live, how they live, what they drive, how much money they make, what they look like, what they wear, all of these kinds of external considerations of status. And the unaspected moon may instinctively defend itself by assuming more status and power than it actually has, or conversely, putting itself down to other people. So you consider the planet that's unaspected and what its nature is. Mercury, of course, is the intellect and the mind and communication. Venus has a lot to do with the love and partnership instinct, how we get along with people in relationships. And you consider the planet, what it means. Unaspected Saturn, for example, does have to do with a person's ability to organize, to work hard, to be disciplined, to be mature, and to be responsible. And if that unaspected Saturn happens to be in its own sign, Capricorn, then it tends to operate pretty terrifically. If it happens to be in, say, Cancer, an unaspected Saturn will operate emotionally, which really has nothing to do with Saturn. Its rulerships, Saturn has two. In the old Chaldean, before we discovered telescope, Saturn rules both Capricorn and Aquarius. One is an earth sign. Aquarius is an air sign. So Saturn is detrimented in Cancer, for example. Not a good sign for it to be in, because the emotions, Cancer, will overwhelm Saturn's natural instinct to be mature and grown up and responsible and organized and disciplined and hardworking and so on. So that's a generalized approach to understanding these unaspected planets, but they can really play a very dominant role in the life because they don't connect by aspect to any other planet. And then you consider the house position that the unaspected planet is in, because the house will rule the external matters of life that are affected directly by that unaspected planet. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, what I'm hearing is that you get the more pure essence of that planet and the sign in the house that it's in combined. It's not covered up. It's not conflicted. It's not, you don't have to share it. You don't have to share that energy with something else.
True. And then you can just take it literally, Thomas, too. An unaspected planet does not relate to any other planets. And in regards to all of the matters in the horoscope that are ruled by that unaspected planet, the person doesn't relate to other people, solely to themselves. Unless, and this, of course, is the whole purpose of astrology, unless the person makes themselves conscious of all of the meanings of that unaspected planet, and then they can consciously correct their course, as it were.
So what do you do then if a house, this is going to stretch it a little bit, let's say a house has no planets in it and is ruled by a planet that has no aspects? I'm sure it exists.
Good question. The unaspected planet itself will rule one or two houses in the horoscope. So that unaspected planet, which has no aspects to any other planet, no connection to any other planet, the one or two houses that it rules, those house matters will also be tied into that unaspected planet. And if the unaspected planet happens to be in a good sign for it, then those house matters will be affected positively. And in that situation, the unaspected planet can be a way out of any problems that the person may get into. And the escape clause, if you will, getting out of problems, will also apply to the house matters ruled by that planet. If that unaspected planet happens to be in a bad sign for it, a negative sign, its fall or its detriment, then the unaspected planet will also affect the house matters ruled by that unaspected planet in a negative way until the person gets a conscious hold on the meaning of that unaspected planet and the houses that it rules. I hope that's not too convoluted.
No, and it was what I was thinking, but I wanted to formalize that of what you just said, to interpret that. And then so here was what I was thinking about, finding unaspected planets in your chart. If you want to see, do I have any? Well, first of all, you'd want to turn off everything that's not Ptolemaic, right? If you can, on your software, turn off all those other minor aspects, correct?
Yes.
Then just get the ones that Robert mentioned, really simple, conjunction, opposition, trine, sextile, square, and then that's it. So then you would look, and if nothing had a line on it, and of course the software, if you're setting up orbs, how far of an orb would you consider if you were looking and trying to hunt this down in your chart, what kind of orbs would you use?
Well, for the Ptolemaic aspect, you can use up to 8 degrees. Now, the other thing, Tom, is most software today, including Ephemeris, which is the program I use on my iPhone, will give you an aspect grid. So you can instantly look at an aspect grid. You don't have to turn anything on or off. And you can look at, say, whatever your unaspected planet is, just find that in the aspect grid and then look down the column to see what aspects it makes. So you can really kind of do it at a glance. Yeah. Or you can just eyeball it.
Yeah.
If you have a planet at, say, 24 degrees, and you look around and it doesn't make any Ptolemaic aspects within 8 degrees, let's say, on either side of 24, then it's unaspected. So you can eyeball it. But if you want to double check yourself, I do that. I do it eyeball because I've done this so long. But it's very easy to just look at the aspect grid, which almost all astrology software will provide you.
We don't use it enough. We should use it more. It's a good tool, especially good for the daily stuff that I do, like on Fun Astrology. I use it a lot. And also for financial analysis, when I'm looking for particular aspects in charts, I use it a lot too, for stocks, companies. Okay, so you turn off all the non-Ptolemaic, the minor aspects, and then you look at the grid. That's a really good idea. And then if you see one sitting there by itself, you've got an unaspected planet. And basically, like what Robert was saying, is take the pure essence of the characteristics of that and synthesize it with the house and the sign that it's in. If you were advising somebody, if somebody came to you and asked for, hey, where could I read more on this? Do you have any go-to thoughts on where they might look?
Well, I can name a bunch of old textbooks, but you can find a lot on Google if you just Google astrology unaspected planets.
Yeah, there are a lot of articles.
You'll get some returns there.
Yeah. Would those be sufficient, do you think? Or I was just wondering if there was a more reliable go-to source.
It's not a topic that's worthy of an entire book, so that you get chapters in books or sections in books, or some of the older books, not even a section. It's just mentioned in a paragraph or two.
Yeah. As you said, I mean, it's not a negative thing, and it gives the pure essence of that planet, but it can be offset and seasoned by the sign or the house. So there you go. I mean, it's a great question, though, and I'm glad that she was spending her summer reading Noel Teal. That's a summer well spent right there, for sure.
One more consideration here, too, and I think you'll probably read this, but these unaspected planets really can be very strong, both for good or for ill, as the old fatalistic books used to say. But because they operate outside of the sphere of any of the other planets, they can actually be determining factors in a life. So if they're negative, it behooves you to study that planet in your horoscope and really give it some thought about how it may be expressing negatively in you. If it's a positive unaspected planet, it can dominate the chart to the point where the person centers their whole life around that one planet. And it can in turn lead to people who achieve a certain amount of success or prominence or expertise in a niche. So it works both ways, this unaspected planet. It can really be a very determining factor in a horoscope.
With that, let me ask a question on that I've been thinking about. Let's say you have a square aspect in your chart, Mars to the moon, let's say. Emotional challenges, you might say. And then you think, am I going to have these? Am I going to be presented with these opportunities for emotional challenges my whole life? Or do you grow past that where that aspect becomes muted? And I would say the same thing here. If you have an unaspected planet that is acting strong in your chart, are you going to get to a point in your spiritual development where you grow past its influence?
See, I think you're touching on the heart of astrology right there. People will look at a Moon-Mars aspect in the natal chart at birth, and it's there for life, and your soul chose it for a reason. And a lot of the old fatalistic books will read that very negatively. Emotional turmoil, emotional conflicts, emotional instability, and yada, yada, yada. One of the best interpretations of the hard aspects like squares and a life-changing aspect or interpretation for me was Reinhold Ebertein's book back in the 40s, Combinations of Stellar Influences. And he basically talks about hard aspects indicate actions. Soft aspects, namely the sextiles and trines, indicate states of being. So if you think of it that way, a moon square Mars will presuppose, it'll sort of preordinate that the person is born into an atmosphere at home of emotional conflict and turmoil to some extent. So that will be their initial impression of life. The moon is women, it's mommy. Mars is male, it's daddy. And the two will be in some sort of emotional conflict at birth. So the person's initial impression of what men and women in marriage are and what emotions are will be drama and conflict. And if they are unconscious and they never grow up, they will unconsciously create conflict and drama all of their lives. The minute you get to astrology and you begin to think about your horoscope and think about yourself, you realize that the real purpose of astrology is to mature, to outgrow. Then the moon square Mars becomes an aspect of action. And if it is conscious action, deliberate action, then that moon square Mars will indicate great ambition and drive. So it converts from a sort of infantile, passive response to life based on emotional conflicts. So people with the moon square Mars will intuitively seek out and create conflicts because that's what feels right to them. They were born into it. So that a peaceful, harmonious existence does not feel right to them instinctively. But if they get some psychology or get into a group and they grow up and mature and they study and work at it, then the moon square Mars can give a tremendous amount of drive and often some sort of public achievement. Mars is drive and ambition and determination and persistence and action. The moon is the public, so that they, once they've grown up, then that aspect can give them a lot of ambition to achieve, and achieve often in a public way. See what I mean?
Yeah, it's wonderful. So you can grow past it, and it can turn into positive action in your life.
I think that's the whole point of astrology. One of the examples I often give to clients, Thomas, is Swami Paramahansa Yogananda, who wrote the autobiography of a yogi. And in that book, he says, you give me the worst date in my horoscope to start an enterprise, and I will begin an enterprise on that date that will succeed. And he was right, because if you are conscious of your horoscope and conscious of yourself, these subterranean unconscious conflicts in the horoscope can't operate unconsciously anymore. You're aware of them. So you turn them into the converse, and everything in astrology has a positive side and a negative side. And I think that's the purpose of it, is to understand your horoscope so thoroughly that you begin to accentuate the positive meanings of the squares and the oppositions and the inconjuncts.
Or the isolated planets.
Or the isolated planets.
Put it all together. All right. Thank you so much. Excellent conversation on that. And thanks to our listener who got a hold of some Noel Teal, and she's going deep. She's going deeper into astrology. He's a great teacher. All right. Thank you guys so much. We'll catch you next time on the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology podcast with Robert Glasscock. Thanks for listening.